I call breakthrough leaders coming up in the organization, but also C-suite leaders to own their differences and leveraging it as their differentiators to get to the top in organizations.
If that line hit you in the gut, just wait until you hear the rest. This episode is a fire starter for anybody who's ever felt underestimated, overlooked. Let's get into it. Before we jump in, can I ask you a quick favor? If this podcast has ever helped you hype you up, made you laugh, just walk a little bit taller where you're at work. Will you head on over to Apple and leave a 5-star rating and review? Every single review helps get other badasses just like you to find the show. Think of like Beyonce clapping for Beyonce. You, by leaving a review, are helping other badass women find their place here as well. All right, let's go.
Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome back to Ordinary to Badass, the podcast where we help women lead in rooms that weren't built for them. Today's guest is Kisha Wynter. She's a leadership consultant, executive coach, and a total trailblazer in women's leadership strategy. She's trained leaders in over 50 countries and spent 2 decades navigating the Fortune 500 world from the inside. And real talk for a moment, I recorded this episode almost a year ago. And since then, Kisha has released her book, Your Power Unleashed: How Savvy Women Use Courage to Get Promoted and Get Paid and Find Fulfillment. I got my hands on a copy, and yes, it's packed with truth, strategy, and soul. If you've ever been passed over, doubted yourself, or struggled to lead in a space that wasn't built for you, both this convo and this book are for you. Okay, I'm so excited for you to hear this new segment, the Badass Move of the Week. I love it. If you want to be a part of it or you want to be recognized on this show for your badass moves, head on over to Instagram, follow me at Ordinary to Badass, and that's where this week's win comes from, or the Badass Move of the Week. It comes from the Instagram community, and oh, I loved it. And this is how the community member talked about how she deals with mansplaining. It was one of my favorites, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. She said, I've adopted the method of pretending they're a 3-year-old. When someone tries to mansplain something to me, I just assume they're a toddler who can't wait to tell me about dinosaurs. I say, wow, Travis, I hadn't heard that before. That's super interesting, buddy. Then I go do my job like they never spoke. This is Olympic level sarcasm and confidence, and I love to see it. Sometimes you just have to find these little things, like when you're mansplained, you treat them like a toddler, or at least in your head, right? And then it like makes you laugh. It makes you not get so consumed by the BS that sometimes happens at the workplace. If you've ever experienced anything like this, if you've ever been mansplained to, I would love to hear from you. Like, take a screenshot of this episode, throw it in your Instagram stories, or DM me at Ordinary to Badass. I want to hear, how do you deal with mansplaining? Okay, next segment is from the inbox. I'm excited for this one. We had a listener, Julie, write in and say, how do I lead when I feel like I don't belong in the room? Ugh. This hits me because I can totally relate to this. There have been many a time where I'm the only woman in the room. I will be in like a supervisory meeting and it's sergeants, lieutenants, majors, right? And 75 people in the room. I'm the only female. It's like, what the heck? I don't have a problem speaking up so much anymore, but it's still like, where's the representation? But there was several, like just probably even 5 years ago, I was intimidated to speak up, whether it was a room full of men or women, right? But when you don't see other people like you, it makes it hard. Here's the truth. You just keep showing up. Show up when your confidence is shaky. There's something magical that happens when you just keep showing up. A lot of times, I'll say yes and. When somebody says something, well, in the beginning, it's what I did, right? Somebody would say something that I agreed with, and I had another thought on top of that. I would say, yes, and this. Or, and we can do this too. Just finding little tiny ways to speak up helps you to get the courage, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you will get. Sometimes a funny thing happens. You say the same thing 5 different meetings, and then magically it gets heard. Human nature, sometimes they don't agree with things the first time, but after they hear it several times, it's like, oh yeah, that resonates. That's a good idea. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. Maybe you just have a different communication style. Or maybe you're a freaking pioneer and you're ahead of your time. So it's going to take other people a little bit longer to catch up. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, my encouragement to you, or my suggestion to you, is to just keep showing up. Don't wait for validation. That's leadership. You show up anyway, even when it's hard. And I know that you are a total badass and you can do this. So keep going. If you have a question, something that you want to talk about and from the inbox, let me know. Reach out to me at Ordinary to Badass and just say inbox and then type your question. Other women, I guarantee you, if you have the question, other women have it too, and they need to hear it. And I can say your name, I can not say your name. That's up to you. I will ask you, but definitely send me a DM on Instagram. Let me know. Inbox and then list your question because other people have the same thing. All right, let's go. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I am so glad you're here. Today's guest is Kisha Wynter. Kisha, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
I'm so excited to be here, Marie.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
I definitely consider myself badass because I have had a lot of obstacles and situations thrown my way, and I'm resilient and I just keep coming. So badass it is, determination and grit.
I love that. And I love when people just own it. It makes me so happy.
Frankly, I think we're all badass, but a lot of times we underplay and we don't own our brilliance. And so I'm all about owning it.
Yes. So is this something that you've always felt? Like, have you always felt like a badass?
You know, it's funny that you should ask that question, because I didn't always feel, I think a lot of times what we do, and tell me if you identify with this, Marie, and even your audience, is that we really take for granted the things that we do that are outstanding because maybe it comes easy to us. And we don't realize how absolutely game-changing it is for someone else. So for me, being the first in my family, my immediate family anyway, to graduate from college, first to like going to a corporate job, back in the early 2000s when they had fax machines, for example, I didn't even know what a fax machine was. And it wasn't because I was so young, it's because I wasn't experienced. And so I didn't recognize that it took a lot of determination, as I was talking about before, a lot of resilience, a lot of grit, a lot of focus to be able to, overcome challenges that I experienced in my life and be able to step into corporate and eventually climb the ladder into leadership positions. And I take a step back and I look and I was just like, look at all that I've been through, all that I've come through, and I'm able to get where I am today. I am really a badass. And so,
Nice.
that is why I feel that way. And I feel so many of us we underplay the things because it may seem easy to us. We don't realize how impactful and important they are.
Yes. And then it's funny because it's like it's so easy to see like, oh, she's a badass. She's a badass, but like
Right.
it's hard for us, or it can be hard for us to start recognizing those things in ourselves.
Yes, 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 yes. And it's like I don't know about you, but I'm assuming this is the case. I'm a champion of other women. So I'm always looking at the potential and, the possibilities for other people. And I think would say in the last decade or so for myself is when I started to reflect. I was like, you know what, you have potential too. You are able to do so many things and really begin to own it. And that's what I do in my coaching business, is really teach women to own their power and unleash it, which we'll get into.
Yeah, yeah. So on the note, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I am, so I'll start on the professional side. I'm a leadership and executive coach that helps women. And I know you work with women in male dominated industries, but women in corporate to really step into their brilliance, as I said before, own their power and unleash it. And one of my beliefs is that we need more good people in positions of leadership so that more good can be in the world. And I think when you come from different backgrounds, and yes, I'm talking about like the demographic difference, gender, race, ethnicity, but not limited to that, personality differences as well. Introverted versus extroverted. I consider myself an introvert. You feel like you're not this command and control and authoritarian leader that's extremely charismatic. And so you don't necessarily think of yourself as leadership material, not recognizing we need people of all personality and styles to step up. And there's potential in all of us. And so it's, I focus on helping leaders, especially those are, I call breakthrough leaders coming up in the organization, but also C-suite leaders to own their differences and leveraging it as their differentiators to get to the top in organizations.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting when you said about women not seeing themselves in leadership roles, or they may not think they have leadership material, that kind of thing. And I was reading Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. Have you ever read that? Yeah.
Yes.
And she was saying like that was the most shocking thing in the world is when she thought like she wasn't qualified, and then to realize she just couldn't see it for herself. What do you recommend to your clients when they're feeling that way? Like maybe they want to step into a leadership role, but they're feeling like a little bit of a fake or a fraud, or they don't know that they have what it takes.
Okay. So I want to do it in the form of, since you started off by asking me about a little bit about myself and my background, I talked about the professional side. I'm going to combine the professional and the personal, and then getting to how I recommend. Because I think as coaches, you tell me if this is not the case for you. Whatever we coach on, a lot of times is what we've had to overcome and go through. And frankly, that's the same for me. And so I start with myself because I don't think you can bring somebody else on a journey that you haven't been for yourself. So for me, as I said before, I don't think I said this. I worked for 20 years in human resources for one of the largest multi-billion multinational corporations in the world. And it blew my mind, to this day it still does, that a person like me from a tiny Caribbean island, I won't say insignificant because we have the Olympics coming up and Jamaica is not insignificant, but a tiny Caribbean island, coming to the United States as a child, and to get to the place where I am, as I said, coaching leaders from over 50 countries nationally, working with multi-billion-dollar companies that I won't name at this point, and about to be a published author. I looked at the top of organizations at the time, and even though right now I can look at myself at this high point, I look back and I didn't always think that I could be a leader for multiple reasons. That I think, one, as a woman, as a person of color, as an immigrant, and not limited to that, as somebody, again, I think the biggest thing for me was being introverted, being more of a quiet person, and really not thinking that when I looked at the top of the organizations, it was the male leader that was very extroverted, very loud, owning the room. And so I didn't think that there was a place for me. But there was one pivotal moment in my career, actually a couple, but one I would talk about right now that I really remember was when one of these C-suite leaders, as I said, very respected, came to me. I was mid-career at that point, still dealing with this imposter syndrome and self-doubt. And he said to me as his HR business partner, hey, Kisha, I want you to give me an assessment of what you think about all my staff. There was a promotion meeting that was coming up and he wanted me to get my input. And I walked into his office in my head thinking, well, what am I going to share with him that he doesn't already know? Like, I don't have anything groundbreaking to share with him. He's probably going to think I have no value and going to dismiss me as the, silly HR person. And so this was the conversation, that voice of the inner critic that was going on in my head at the time. And as I sat down, and I just, badasses will push through our self-doubt anyway. And I spoke up and I started sharing my perspective, again, fully expecting him to rush me along and get me out of his office in a few minutes. But to my surprise, he didn't do that. What he actually did was take out his pen. And not only was he paying attention and taking notes, but he was furiously writing. And I thought to myself, what is he writing? Like, I'm not saying anything that's, out of the ordinary or groundbreaking. And that is an example of me undermining the insights that I've gotten of working for over 10 years at that point, and realize it. You said you read Lead In, and I'm sure you're into a lot of personal development work as well. And when you're in the space and you learn a lot of insights, you don't recognize that everybody else is not on that journey. So my insights and my learning from my expertise was actually groundbreaking to him. And I didn't realize it until that moment. And something in me at that point just really snapped. And I said to myself, enough of playing small. Not only was I good enough to sit at the table as that incident, because, after that meeting, he actually took those notes and he went and he pitched to the business leader about his staff using my exact words. Luckily, he gave me credit because, a lot of these people don't give you credit, but luckily gave me credit. And that's when it really began to dawn on me that not only did I belong at the table, but I was capable enough to lead it. And then, as they say, not only was I ready to play with the big boys, but they could learn a thing or two from me, just like I was learning from them. And so that is really what I tell my clients. I say to them, listen, take a stock of the things that you do well. Actually, sometimes we're not even aware of it. So I give them this exercise that they go to, I would say 7 to 10 of the people that have worked with them in different capacity, and tell them, it's a simple text or a simple email. Give me 5 bullets, 5 words that describe my strength, and then 1 area of opportunity for me. And then usually you'll see some consistent themes. And between that and a strength-based assessment, for example, you begin to realize, actually, these are my differentiators. And if other people recognize it, it's for me to begin to own it. So you actually have something to ground yourself in terms of what your strengths and your differentiators are. So when that voice of self-doubt comes up that tells you don't belong, you're not good enough, it's not fact, it's not truth. You actually look at the evidence from the feedback that you've gotten from other people, as well as from assessments.
Yeah, it's amazing how just sometimes words of encouragement from other people or hearing what other people think, and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize, or I didn't know that was a thing. But then also how that can speak life into us and like give us confidence that we didn't know we had.
And Maria, I'm saying yes, because that word, speak life, is so powerful. I think so often, because of that inner critic and that voice of self-doubt, we're thinking thoughts that really tear down our self-confidence. And sometimes we even speak out loud what I would say is death to our dreams, death to our potential, death to the next level for us. So life, I love how you say that, speak life.
So once you gather these things, once you start to find out like, okay, this is what everybody thinks about me, or this is what they think that my strengths are, or what an opportunity is for me, what would be the next step?
I love that. So the next step would be, I'll go through my journey, because I too went through this exercise at that point in my career. After I went, luckily I was in a community of other people that were coaches, even though I wasn't a coach yet. And I spoke to one of my best friends, and she gave me this exercise, which is also what I give to my clients now. It's okay. So what are the top 3 things that you heard that really resonate with you, that you're proud of, and that you want to lean into? Or if there was something that's missing, what would you like to add? And so for me, some of the things that people said that I was very insightful. I gave things that were like, that's why he was taking notes. Full of insights that things that people miss, I'm able to see. And part of the reason I'm able to see it is because I'm quiet long enough to pay attention and to read the room, the power of introversion. Because
Yes.
you're not spending all your time blabbering your mouth. You're actually able to read the room and understand what's going on. And so it is actually that strength alone was twofold for me, because it allowed me to give myself permission to be quiet when I needed to be, and not to feel shame, because it's not a lack of confidence. There's a difference.
Right.
It's the ability to observe and to read. And because of that, I'm able to see the interpersonal dynamics and then put it together with my actual domain expertise, which gave me insights. So that insight was one. The second thing is just my authenticity and my ability to speak truth to people. Like we leave meetings where people wouldn't get promoted, and people would ask their managers, okay, what's the feedback? Why didn't I get promoted? And they would beat around the bush and not be direct. And I'm like, well, I didn't waste a 5-hour meeting or a 2-day meeting to come out and not tell the truth. So I would tell them, it didn't feel good at the time, but I told the truth. But guess what? People eventually like, you know what? If you want to hear the truth, go tell Kisha. And they knew it came from a position of not being harsh or mean. It was actually the opposite. I cared. So I cared enough to tell you what was hard to hear and be truthful so that you have something to work on. And, I know you focus on women. And one of the things, I think it was from McKinsey, if I remember, and it might have been a combined study with Lean-In and McKinsey, that they came out and said one of the things that women stop women from getting to the top in organizations is because they don't get this transparent feedback. So they don't know what to work on. Whereas the guy, because typically the decision maker, the C-suite leader, right? At least 80%, I think the number is 85% now, are men. They grab the guy and they're like, look, Joe, this is what they said about you in the room. But they don't do that with the women because they don't want to be perceived as either someone with bias or a jerk, or like they're scared we're gonna cry or something crazy like that, right? So anyway, back to the question is like, what do we do next? It's really take a stock of the top 2 or 3 things, and really, own it first of all, and then are these the things that I want to be known for? And if it is, incorporate that into your brand and make that. I talk about a 4-step process to win at work, and the I is your image. And it's your personal brand. And so take that into your personal brand and just leverage it and make it a differentiator. Turn that strength into a differentiator.
So what if somebody is not, I know there's brands for like company or personal brand. What if somebody is not part of a personal brand? Maybe they don't think the brand thing applies to them. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I love the fact, I need to stop saying I love, because everything you say I love apparently. But yeah, it's a good question. The brand piece, people overcomplicate brands a lot. The fact is, brand is just what you're known for. And the truth is, we all have a brand. We're all known for something. The question is whether or not you're aware of what people are saying about you when you're not in the room, because they are saying something, believe you me. Or whether or not you are able to drive that narrative, right? And that is what I tell people all the time. It's like, they're going to say something. Why not drive the narrative about what they're going to be saying about you? And how do you do that? Building upon what we just talked about knowing what your differentiators are by doing, and I would tactically, because I know you love your audience to get tactical advice. The tactical advice is to ask those 7 to 10 people, what are the top 5 things that are your strengths? Just words. It can just be one word. And then you identify the top 3 things. If these are the 3 things you want to be known for, run with it. If it's not, then you pull in one thing, and then you start taking action plan to drive that narrative. What does that mean? So for example, another thing besides insightful and direct, one of the things that I was known for is in the organization that I worked in, the command and control style was very dominant. And at that point, I had begun to be in coaching certification training. And my natural style is because I have that level of curiosity. I'm always asking questions. I'm always helping people come get to the solution themselves. And going through coaching training helped me to turn the things that I did naturally into an actual competency. And I began to model it and then teach it to leaders. So what did that look like? all right, people already thought about me as a coaching leader style. But then I would actually go and teach in the organ, do lunch and learns around, okay, how do you ask powerful questions? How do you display curiosity? How do you, all the different things that you learn in coaching. I went and I did, emails to the organization, blogs to the organization, lunch and learns, and really take an activity every single month that you're doing within your inner circle, and sometimes even in broader outside of your inner circle, to double down on those things so that more people can know about you according to the things that you're already doing naturally anyway. But now it's about expanding that visibility.
Yeah. I think when it comes to leadership, sometimes women struggle with expanding that visibility, or just not knowing, like maybe there's somebody else that has more qualifications than them. Maybe they need to add more skills before they start doing that. What would you say to that?
If the woman is struggling herself to get the visibility that she desires to expand, her brand, that's what you mean? Yeah, what I would love to tell folks is that, first of all, it's really not that hard. In your organization, something as simple as when you go to meetings, right? So for me, as I said before, I had to give myself permission to be quiet and observe and have insights. But once I had the insight, I had to stretch myself, beginning in small meetings that I was in, to speak up. A lot of times when we're quiet in meetings, even if you're introverted, you become invisible. People don't actually know what is important to you and don't actually know what you're thinking. And so just by speaking up more in meetings and inserting yourself, as one leader told me, giving your perspective. I mean, imagine if I didn't share anything with that leader that day, he wouldn't have known that I was insightful. So start small. Then the second thing that you can do to make it a little bit bigger is volunteer or grab the opportunity for cross-functional projects. Because sometimes when we report to one person, even if that one person knows how great we are, if they're not a great advocate of you, then you remain invisible. And so really assess, look in your organization, who some of these decision makers are, and see how you can cultivate opportunities to get in front of them. It could be from cross-functional projects. You could volunteer for those. It could be from committees in organization. There are a lot of organizations that have women's employee resource groups, for example, and they put on different events. How can you be a leader in one of those events? How can you participate in one of those events, present, organize, utilize the skills that you have? You don't always have to be the one on stage, but you could be the one behind the scenes that's pulling everything together and talking to the key stakeholders. So look for creative ways, such as those few that I named, that will expand your ability to have that visibility. And the third piece, I would say, building upon knowing who the key decision makers are within organizations. Sometimes it takes courage to just set up a coffee chat with them. You would be surprised. One of the mantras I have recently, even as an entrepreneur myself, is a lot of times we think as women, as introverts, that we're bothering people. And we don't realize that there are a lot of people that actually want to help us. A lot of people want to invest and mentor, especially if you are a rising star. And you can't be a rising star if nobody sees you. And so I say, take the initiative, put time on somebody's calendar, have a conversation with them, share some of the things that you're working on, and your impact that you're making in the organization. Ask for their advice so that those key decision makers can become advocates and sponsors of you. So those are 3 things you can do.
Yeah. And just a couple things that I want to add on to what you said is like the whole mentor piece. It's like, if say they're speaking in a meeting or something, I have found it helpful, like, okay, you said X, I did Y, and it resulted in Z. Like, at least tell them like what they're saying and then how you implemented it and how you got results from it. And I think people are like, oh, this is an action taker. This is somebody who's going to actually listen to what I say and, take it put it into action. So they're more willing to like kind of mentor you, bring you along because they see that you're actually listening and then taking the next step, which a lot of people aren't even doing that, you know?
They're not even, they're just, they hear it and they don't come back. And I love that because it shows them that you're somebody that you're coachable, as we would say in the coachable field, that you're taking it, you're implementing it, but you're grateful enough to come back and say, hey, like I tried the thing that you told me to do, and this is what happened. And even if it didn't work, right, you could share your lessons, or even go back and say, hey, like it didn't, like, why do you think it didn't work? And have a discussion around it. But people, that's a differentiator too. People don't go back and say what they did and whether or not, and what happened.
Yeah. And then it's like, we forget too, other people like to hear that they helped. Other people like to hear that they got you results or, you know, that they had an impact. What they said helped you. And so it's pretty simple, but we forget it.
And think about when we help somebody else, like when we are mentoring, how we feel. We're giving the other person the opportunity to feel as if that they're making an impact in somebody else's life and that they also have the ability to pay it forward. So it's, you know, again, that inner critic is always telling us the negative, but there's always a flip side. And I say, tell yourself the story that's going to make you take action and get you the result that you want, not the story that's going to hold you back. Because at the end of the day, it's all a story anyway.
Yeah, I love that. So tell yourself the story that's gonna help you take action. Is that what you said?
Yes, yeah, it's
So
going to help
good.
you take action and move you forward.
So can you give us an example, like how you reframe it, or when you're feeling down and you're telling yourself a bad story, like what you do?
All right. So, okay, perfect example. Here's another story. I have a lot of
I
stories
like
of
it.
me of me getting in my head. Remember I told you the one about being in that meeting with that leader. There was another story that I went to an interview. This was probably the biggest shift that got me into the whole coaching space because I had to learn how to coach myself. I was at a point in my career that I was interviewing for one of the biggest roles that I had ever interviewed for in my career. And I went to, it was an internal promotion but in another department. And it was in my first time speaking with a C-suite executive one-on-one. He was an officer of this multi-billion-dollar company that I worked for. And he had, I said, the voice of Morgan Freeman, like the biggest personality in the room. And so I get in front of him and I'm like, totally, even though on paper, as Sheryl Sandberg says, I met all the qualifications. I was qualified. They wouldn't have been interviewing me if I wasn't good enough to sit in front of this person. But as soon as I got there and I opened up my mouth to speak when he asked me, tell me about yourself, the voice in my head was telling me he's going to find out that you're fake. He's going to think that you have, no value to add. He's going to think that you're not smart. And he's going to see right through you. You're able to fool all the HR people, but he's an executive. He's the CEO of the company. He's going to know. He's going to know you, right? And so this is what's going on in my head. And it took me a minute. I literally, when he said, tell him about myself, I couldn't speak. The words couldn't come out of my mouth. It was really dry. He said to me, do you want a glass of water? Are you okay? He noticed. And I said, yeah. He gave me a bottle of water. I sipped it. While I was sipping it, I thought to myself, this is the reframe. I said, okay, I'm here. I'm in this room. It's do or die. And the reality is that even if I don't get this position, this could be a great learning opportunity for me. It is my first time sitting in front of a C-suite executive. This is not the only job in the world. And so I'm going to look at this as a learning opportunity. So I connected to a value. That is one of my personal values, learning and growing. And so that is a big reframe. And normalizing the fact that, hey, like, yes, it feels uncomfortable because you've never had a conversation with somebody at this high level before, and it's totally normal. You're not an idiot. Even if you don't get this job, there are other opportunities, and you're going to learn from this so that the next time you do this, you'll be even more prepared. And that's how I de-escalated the situation in my head. I connected to a personal value. And this is what I tell people to do all the time. When the inner critic comes up, it's multiple strategy, but for me, one of the most effective ones is leaning into a personal value. I do it all the time. The first time I stepped on a big stage to give a keynote speak in front of 500 plus corporate executives, I said the same thing. I said, you know what? Another value I have is contribution. I want, if only one person in this audience walks away believing in themselves and going for the position that they want, and it changes the life of their own career trajectory, but think about it, the life of their family as well, it's all worth it. So I didn't focus on my ability to perform or impress. I focused on the contribution that I wanted to make to the audience and the impact that I wanted to make. And that allowed me to get out of this cycle of this negative self-talk that was going on in my head.
So good. And it's like, I love how, you ran into a roadblock and you were like nervous as all get out and just kind of freaking out. And then you just talked yourself into a different place of being. It's like whether you got the result you wanted from that conversation with him, that doesn't even matter. The win was that you were able to reframe and move on. And then it helped you, I'm sure, for future interviews or future conversations going forward. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's a life skill. So in that moment, and who knows, I probably did this naturally before in many different situations, but that was the first time I became aware of it. And then so it became a conscious competency now that I use to this day, because the reality, and I say this all the time, avoiding uncomfortable situations and avoiding feeling afraid is not the goal. Because the truth is, if you never feel fear, it means you're not stepping outside of your comfort zone. You're not pushing yourself. You're not trying to play big, because we don't feel afraid of things that are familiar to us. We feel afraid when we step outside of our comfort zone. So first of all, another reframe is celebrate that is happening, because, hey, learning growth is happening, right? You don't get afraid of things that you do every day. And so that is, and again, that's another badass mentality that, hey, feel the fear and do it anyway. And as a result of it, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow. And so, yeah, that's one of the most consistent reframes that I employ.
So, Kisha, I want to pivot a little bit. We are in a world where we see everything on social media and it looks like everything is all gumdrops and lollipops. It's perfect for everyone. Or like, oh, Kisha's a badass, but it just comes natural to her. That's not for me. Can you share a little behind the scenes of some of the struggles you went through to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think I just shared a lot of it. It's the dealing with, for me, the biggest thing is dealing with that self-doubt, that fear, and working through that internal piece consistently, feeling that I don't belong or I'm not good enough to be in the room. The second piece as well is another belief is that, based on, and I'm sure depending on how you were raised, that your hard work needs to speak for itself. That's another belief. Even sometimes you believe that I deliver strong results and that should speak for itself. And I didn't know the internal game, I would say, actually not even the internal game, the external savvy that you had to have in order to navigate the corporations that you're in order to advance. I told you, I didn't even know back in the early 2000s what a fax machine was. When my boss said fax this, I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And so I had to, first of all, bridge the gap between my lack of experience and my lack of knowledge, and really starting from the bottom and learning and building competency, in addition to learning to believe in myself, even when I didn't know, trusting that I had the ability to figure it out. Another life skill. And so people may look at me and say, wow, like she's about to publish a book. She's coached leaders from, dozens of countries globally. She's done all of these things. She speaks on big stages as a keynote speaker. But all the things that I told you before behind the scene are the things that I had to work through. And frankly, in many ways, continue to work through, because as I said before, the higher you step you're going to be new challenges, and learning to overcome those challenges and really having the grit and the determination that even if you fall, you get back up, you keep rising, and you keep trying. But people don't see the fall behind the scenes. They don't see when you fail, when you have a conversation with a leader and it falls flat. Nobody buys your product or your proposal in an organization. So you got to go back to the drawing board. These are all the things that I had to learn to commute. And the other thing is around communicating in a way that is going to be impactful and influential enough to drive the projects that I want to drive across the board. So those are a lot of things that I work through behind the scenes in order to get to where I am, or at least get to where I was in corporate.
Yeah, yeah. And then also it's like, as a leader, I would rather have an employee who's willing to step out and learn and fail and then pick up and pivot and try again. I would so much rather that than somebody who's just not going to try at all.
Absolutely. And you know, the whole, I don't know if you're familiar with Carol Dweck's growth mindset
Yeah.
versus the fixed mindset,
Yeah.
right? And I love her work and how it actually combines with Brene Brown's work, because she talks about like, you know, the kid, and that's one of the things I know from a child. It's just like I was never the kid that was a straight A student, at least, you know, first, second, third. It wasn't until I got to like fifth grade that something snapped in me. And again, I began to break out of the C average into like the B's and the A's. And it allowed me to develop this determination and this resilient and this growth mindset that I fail, I come, I try again. I fail, I come and try again. And, you know, it takes vulnerability, which is what, you know, Brene Brown talks about. It's that willingness to like step out there, you know, give it your all, look like an idiot and keep going. It takes courage and vulnerability to do that. And a lot of people are not willing because everybody, you know, this Instagram world now, as you said, everybody wants to look like they have everything together and they have the picture perfect life, but it's not truth. It's not real.
Yeah, yeah. Or it's like one little sliver of truth, but you don't see all the crud that goes on behind the scenes.
What did it take to get here? Because it's the overnight success is rarely ever true, if ever.
Right, right. Agreed. So I don't think we've heard, how did you go from being an HR to becoming a leadership coach? And what was that transition like? Did you leave HR completely? And then like, was that terrifying? What did that feel like in the moment? Can you take us back to that?
Yes. So, well, first of all, I started to talk about how I needed to work on my communication skills in order to drive impact in an organization. And it reminds me of, it's about 10 to 12 years ago, where I sat in this organization, again, hearing another discussion around how this woman, another woman that is going to be promoted or should be promoted anyway to the next level. Typically, it's usually to her first executive level position, coming from either a middle management or individual contributor role. You would hear the discussion, oh, this woman is very smart and she has everything that it takes to succeed, her deep domain expertise. But the one thing she doesn't have is that this confidence and this leadership presence to own the room. And I was so, and then the takeaway was like, HR people, go teach them to be confident. And I'm like, okay, not helpful. And so, as I said, I talked so much about my own journey. I said to myself, okay, these were the things that I had to do to get to the place where I could communicate, I could own the room. And so I'm going to go and share with these leaders how they can do this. And I created a whole program called, at the time, it was called Own Your Power, where we would help women in the organization, high potentials, to do just that. And I went and I presented it because, again, that pain point of hearing this over and over again, not being helpful. I went and presented it to my manager at the time, and his eyes basically glazed over. And I said, okay, clearly I'm not communicating this in a way that's impactful or confident enough. So I went back to the drawing board and I said, okay, these are my talking points. These are my bullets. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to talk to female executives in the organization that knew what it took for them to get to that level, and they would get it. So I did. It worked. We all got together. We pitched to the CEO of the business at the time, and we had permission to roll out this program that I had created and designed as a result of my own experience. And then by that time, I had gone through coaching training. Then it worked so well in that organization. One leader said to me, well, forget this organization. You need to go do a TED Talk, which I haven't done yet, by the way, and go like do a business on this. I said, well, don't tell me twice. I was already thinking about that. But when you hear a officer of a large company, like actually see the business opportunity,
Yeah.
I literally 3 months later set up my LLC. It was part-time. And I said, if it worked within this organization, I'm going to offer this program outside my organization. So I started a blog, a YouTube channel at the time, and I got people on LinkedIn to sign up for my 4 women. I remember who they are to this day. They were the first 4 women that they paid me. And I said, oh, somebody's going to pay me for this knowledge that I have, and see them get promotions, get salary increases, get results in like 6 months. Most of them did. And that was when that whole thing was birthed. So that's what gave me the motive to do it. And then when I did it, I realized this is actually a concept and a need in organizations and in people outside of the company that I work for. And then that's how I transitioned to doing leadership coaching and executive coaching and then training. Now, the honest truth is that I was already doing that within the organization, having an HR background. So I just stepped away from doing the standard interviewing and HR work and focused on coaching 100% of the time.
So good. I love this. And also, it sounds like you took steps on your own. Like you probably didn't have to create that extra presentation for women to gain confidence, but that was something you took action on and implemented. And then I think people can recognize that and really appreciate, oh yeah, she's a go-getter. She's going to step up. I don't have to tell her what to do.
Exactly. Right. So, and that's the thing that goes going back to the whole branding conversation. Remember, I said one of the things I wanted to be known for was coaching. So I started out teaching managers how to coach their direct reports to be more effective. And then it evolved to an additional thing was now, how do you coach the women in the organization to own their power? Oh, and by the way, right, because we're not going to put the burden just on the women. Like, how can we and that's what I do now, not just coach the individual, but I say coach the system. How do you coach the decision makers and the leaders to open up their perspective, to recognize that there is actually not just one way to lead, but there are different strengths that show up in different styles, and telling people to change. Yes, you want to stretch and help everybody to grow, but telling people that they need to change who they are in order to be successful is counterproductive and actually limits innovation in organizations, because you're limiting diversity of thought and diversity of style. And so I believe in coaching both the individual as well as the organizations, because I think individuals get in the way of their own success, but also organizations get in the way of their own success as well, because they try to make everybody the same cookie cutter, which, cuts down creativity and innovation in organizations.
So good. I feel like I could go on forever. So many good things here. But let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
Repeat that. You cut up for a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's end with a tip for women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
I love how you say fighting for the life that they want. First of all, I'm going to give you 2 tips. If you are in an organization where you feel like it's suffocating the life out of you, you're fighting for the life, I would consider looking at other places that are going to nourish and cultivate your strengths. I see too many women sometimes remaining in a place that doesn't value them. And the thing that organization looked down on, another organization may be desperately in need of. So first of all, ask yourself whether or not are you in the right place or if the challenge is you. If you determine that that thing that is holding you back actually does lie within you, I go back to what I said in the beginning. Is taking a step back and getting feedback from others on the things that you do that are making it your differentiator so that you can really own the strengths that you bring to the table.
So good. And how can we connect with you?
Yes, everyone can. My favorite place to hang out is on LinkedIn. So you can follow me on LinkedIn at Kisha Wynter. You can also go to my website, yourpowerunleashed.org.
Thank you so much, Kisha. You've been a total badass and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thank you so much for having me here, Marie.
And with that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it. Okay, next is our pop culture punchline. This is where Katniss Everdeen meets Kisha Wynter. Wasn't that episode from Keisha fire? I loved it so much. And you know what it reminded me of? The Hunger Games with Katniss Everdeen. Remember when she said, I volunteer as tribute? She just stepped right up and said it. She jumped right in. She didn't wait. She stepped forward as she was. She didn't feel like the badass in the beginning, but she grew into it over time merely by stepping forward. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just take one little step, one little step. And then before you know it, you are a freaking badass. Well, I think you're a badass right now, but you actually feel that way. Katniss Everdeen stepping forward, that right there, that's Kisha Wynter energy. Remember that Kisha Wynter quote? You don't have to change who you are to be successful. You just have to embrace your authentic self and leverage those differences as differentiators. Someone ever told you you're too much, you're too bold, too different. Maybe you're just too powerful in a room that wasn't built for you. Step into the arena, lead louder. You were never meant to blend in. Just go for it. So that's my encouragement for you this week, is to embrace those things about you that are different. Those are going to make you the better leader. It's also going to make you more comfortable in your skin. If we can accept those things about us that are different than other people, and if you work in an industry that's predominantly male, man, you are different. Automatically, you're different. So instead of like trying to hide that or blend in, no, step out, be you, and then it's amazing the people that are attracted to you, right? You automatically have something different and people gravitate towards that because why? Usually we don't want all the same, right? So a different point of view, a different perspective, that right there, that's badass and that's you. So own that this week. If this episode lit something up in you, then I want you to grab my free guide, Breaking Barriers. It's filled with tools to help you lead louder, speak up, and own your own damn seat at the table. So you can go to ordinarytobadass.com/barriers, or you can even go to Instagram at ordinarytobadass and DM me. Just DM me the word barriers and I'll send you the link so you can get there. And tune in on Thursday for the Badass Debrief. It's the first time you're ever going to have heard this episode or this type of episode. So we're switching things up around here because that's what leaders do. That's what badasses do. Not afraid to make a change. So tune in on Thursday for the Badass Debrief. And I want you to join Instagram community. It is growing. And my favorite thing is hearing from you guys, is having polls and getting your guys' responses and your feedback or answering different questions that you guys are sending in. It makes me so happy. And also, there's nothing like being around a group of badasses who support each other, right? So again, Instagram at Ordinary to Badass. And I can't wait to see you on Thursday for the Badass Debrief.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.